Well, happy opening day, folks. I guess by the time you're watching this or listening to it, opening day might be over. But, it's the opening day time of the year, the opening weekend of baseball season. My name is Bryce Koon alongside Logan Whaley, and we bring you the Chopaholic, an Atlanta Braves podcast hosted by two people with an unhealthy addiction. So that's seemingly this fan base as well. So we hope that we can come alongside you over the course of 162 plus what should be a fun 2025 season and beyond. Welcome in, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast feeds, wherever you may be listening. We appreciate you and lock it in. But Logan, like I said, it is opening day. Major League Baseball is back. Atlanta's playing in San Diego. We get the early West Coast swing, those 10 p.m. games for the Eastern Standard Time people out of the way early on in the year. It's one of the benefits of living in the Central Time Zone now, I guess. But nonetheless, welcome in, Logan. We're going to kind of start this thing off a little bit of an introduction to the podcast. So I'll hand the reins over to you. Introduce yourself and let people know who you are.
It's dangerous, Bryce, handing the reins over to me. But hello, I'm Logan Whaley, a longtime Braves fan. I grew up 5.5 hours from Atlanta, which is kind of crazy to think about. Grew up in Western Kentucky, which is Braves country still, even though some people like the Cardinals here. Grew up having that Cardinals hatred and flowing through my veins. But now I'm a TV sports anchor, and so I have to kind of talk favorably about the St. Louis Cardinals because we have to show highlights of them in our broadcasts. But here we are. Like I said, longtime Braves fan. I was in Atlanta pretty much every year for at least a couple of series, and really grew up on the baby Braves and Chipper Jones and all of those guys. But now here we are, hoping to get back to the World Series. Right? Hope that's the hope for every fan base. Certainly the hope for our fan base right now. But here we go.
Short and sweet. I like it. Yeah, that's Logan Whaley. We'll get into obviously more of the I don't want to say the semantics, but how we kind of met and everything like that here in a second. But yeah, my name is Bryce Koon. If you're watching, you can obviously see a plethora of different programs and things going on in my background. But I grew up in Columbus, Georgia, an hour and a half away from what was Turner Field, probably 2 hours away from now Truist Park. But I like to call it SunTrust Park. We only got that for like a year or two. SunTrust looked better, but it is what it is. But in all seriousness, grew up in Columbus, Georgia, diehard Braves fan. Like you said, Logan, grew up on the baby Braves. Got to see kind of that McCann, Francoeur. Can I throw Ryan Langerhans in there? No, I'm just kidding. But can I give it
Matt Diaz?
Matt Diaz.
Is this going to be a podcast where we just start naming the most random old Brave?
Yeah, pretty much.
Dude, I had a baseball reference page up because for the life of me, I saw someone with the last name Pena, and I'm like, the Braves had a Pena for like 2 years, and he was awesome for those 2 years. And it was Ramiro Pena. So,
well, my favorite player was Martin Prado. I loved me some Martin Prado, and so I'll throw him in that group as well. But no, yeah. So Logan and I are gonna kind of tag team and do this podcast throughout the year. We'll have some guests on. There might have an episode with just one of us. Like Logan mentioned, he's a TV sports anchor in the Western Kentucky area. Still, you're back home now because for people who listened to this when it was kind of still under the crowded booth, but when we were on the channel, you were in Jonesboro. Now you're back home. So yeah, it is what it is. But like I said, when I was born in Columbus, Georgia, lived in Georgia for a long time, and then now live with my wife and 10-month-old little baby girl in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where I cover the LSU Tigers. So we get some great college baseball down here, which is just phenomenal. Got a big weekend series coming up against Mississippi State. I'll have to catch the tail end of opening day from the press box at Alex Box Stadium. So that being said, welcome in, Braves fans, one and all, into the podcast. We appreciate you hanging out. How did Logan and I meet? Well, Logan, I feel like we're on a dating show. Like, what are we doing here? Like, how did we meet? Are we introducing ourselves to each other's families here? No, but in all seriousness, it was over a meal of Four Rivers Barbecue in Winter Park.
Very romantic.
No, Logan and I
a light dinner.
Logan and I met in Orlando, Florida, with the Florida Collegiate Summer League. We were both play-by-play broadcasters for each individual team. So Logan, I'm going to have to throw it out here. You were with the infamous 2019 squad of the Winter Garden Squeeze that won how many games that summer?
Not very many.
Not very many.
What, it was 5 or 6, had to have been.
I was a part of the Winter Park Diamond Dogs.
Yeah.
We won the league, and it was like opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of what was happening that summer.
This is our lives now too, because you're covering LSU, you're covering that. I covered Arkansas State, and this was the Arkansas State time when they were just so bad. First year of Butch Jones as head coach was one of the worst teams in FBS. So, you know, it's fine. Just lovable losers, right? That's probably the theme of my broadcast.
Well, and obviously, you know, for people who are checking this out, maybe some of your people in Western Kentucky, for people down here in Baton Rouge with me, not a lot of Braves fans down here, tons of Astros fans, especially with the Alex Bregman connection. We've got the camera autofocusing here on us. Too much tech going on tonight. But that being said, Matt McMahon connection, we're getting way too far into the weeds. Murray State, LSU, pivotal offseason down here and on the Bayou for Matt McMahon. So that being said, Logan and I love baseball. We love the Braves. We said, hey, let's do this thing. We want you to come alongside of us. And we're also, I don't think Logan really knew this, but we're also pumped to partner with Georgia Golf Company. If you'd like to play some golf, if you like this hat right here, it's literally a range bucket with peaches falling out of it. How can you get more Georgia than that right there, folks? You can use code TCB15 for 15% off your order. They're going to be sponsoring the whole 2025 season. So it's we're pumped. We're excited. And hope to add some more people along the way as well. So that's the intro to the pod. 6 minutes and 30 seconds of us talking about our lives. Now you can skip through and really kind of talk about what we want to talk about for this season. Logan, like I mentioned, happy opening day to everyone. You're watching, listening to this. Maybe the Braves have already played San Diego. I believe it's a 4:10 Eastern first pitch. I think so. I think it is. I really don't. I think it is. I get confused being on Central Time and all that kind of stuff and looking at MLB.com. But it's an interesting season, I think. And I was watching some MLB Network over the past couple of weeks, and they were talking about a lot of some of the news out of Braves camp was for a lot of contenders, you're kind of sitting in a situation, Logan, where you know who you have. There's not a lot of intriguing storylines. You know, you have some young teams that have some young talent. Are that, you know, guys going to break camp? Obviously, you know, the Braves had Drake Baldwin, who is going to break camp and probably be the starter on opening day. All those things considered, it really, this camp and this spring training, if you've been following and watching kind of what's going on, there's not a ton of position battles. I think it's health, the Jurickson Profar scare, the Austin Riley scare, Spencer Strider's return. So there's a lot of storylines that can come into play. But Logan, I want to kind of start the pod with this. It puts us into this aspect of, without getting into the weeds, the expectations for 2025. I don't think it's World Series or bust. They're going to say all the right things in the locker room. But man, you got to get past the first round. Like, that's how I just kind of feel like NLCS or bust, in my opinion. I know that it might be a loser mentality. You want to win the World Series. I get it. I want to see him make the NLCS.
I'm with you. I do think this team, certainly, if they ended up in the World Series, I don't think anyone would be surprised. But it's interesting because I feel like last year the wild card or the question mark was with the pitching staff. Would Chris Sale stay healthy? How would Ronaldo Lopez look turning into a starter? And genuinely, that was the strength of the team. If you would have told me in 2024 that pitching would have been the strength of the Atlanta Braves, I would have said, okay, how many wins? It starts with the number 1, I'm assuming, because it's going to be over 100 wins and a likely World Series appearance. Well, it turns out just about everyone was in the lineup either had one of the worst years of their career or just wound up injured. And so I feel like after that, this is kind of the post-hype breakout type of team where I think a lot of people are, I wouldn't say they're overlooking the Braves, but certainly I think they're buying into the hype of what Philadelphia and the Mets are bringing to the table this year. And I think it'll be a very competitive division, but at the same time, you got to look at Atlanta and say this could be a really scary team if the lineup even comes close to regressing to the mean, which is a positive thing in this case for the Braves.
I was kind of looking and writing down some questions that I maybe have for you tonight. And I think one of the biggest things is like the general question when you're talking about whether you're talking with your friends, you know, I was talking with my dad about this. He's like, what do you feel like needs to go right? Stay healthy. Like, I mean, the pieces are there. And Logan, and I think one of the great things about us doing this podcast is you're going to see the different viewpoints that both of us come through. I mean, I think in terms of how we perceive Braves baseball. And I think one of my things is, and I say this a lot about whether it's college football or anything. If this isn't a video game, MLB The Show just came out. I know you've been grinding. I've been grinding playing. You can't have 99 overalls across the board. The Braves are pretty dang close to that in the lineup. Like in terms of having the best player, like you can make an argument they probably have outside of shortstop, which I'm sure we'll have a plethora of conversation about over the next month or two about shortstop. But just in terms of what you have at your 9 starting positions, you're like, yeah, I mean, that's pretty solidly top 10 of the league. Like, that is safely. And you kind of, we could nitpick and we could talk about that stuff, but they stay healthy. Like if the lineup stays healthy, by the time they get Acuna back and all these types of things, I mean, I know last year was disappointing, but the expectation 2025, if you stay healthy, you can accomplish whatever you want with this group, especially offensively.
Oh, no doubt. And I think that a lot of people are going to look at, the Orlando Arcia and be like, this guy was not good, easily probably the worst part of the Braves this past season. But at the end of the day, I mean, what are you really expecting out of him this year? He's going to be bottom of the order, and you just need him to be close to league average. But even if he's not, it's still you still look at the strength of the other guys in the lineup and say, you know what, this is still one of the best, well-rounded lineups in all of baseball right now.
You talk about well-roundedness. Brian De La Cruz has been added, which for the longest time just ticked me off that I had to see the notable Major League addition was Brian De La Cruz. Nothing against the young man, but it's like, come on. Obviously, Jerks and Profar is the big one. I mean, and I think I will say this, when that signing was announced, I was like, okay, here we go. Like that is you have a guy coming off a career year. Funny enough, I was in Frisco, Texas, about a month ago, and talking with a couple of their minor league, affiliate guys, and LSU was playing in Frisco, the AA affiliate of the Texas Rangers, and they were talking about like, it's cool to see what Jurickson has done. Like he was the top prospect. Well, he was the top prospect in baseball, but he was the number 1 guy in the Rangers system when he came up. It didn't really, formulate into what they thought, but he's turned out to have a pretty long career. He's just now 30 years old. It feels like he's been playing for 20 years at this point. But all being said, Atlanta gets him when you feel like maybe he found something that clicked, puts up a ridiculous season in San Diego. It's going to be atop the lineup until Acuna comes back, and we'll kind of see how that shakes out. But going into the expectations, what did Jurickson and Profar, that addition, do for you? Did it move the needle for you in terms of the outfield and how it could be settled?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if anything, the bat is probably the biggest thing. You're not really expecting a whole lot in the field from this guy, but at the same time, it's it'll probably be average or close to average, I would say. Mm-hmm. But the bat was the big thing. I mean, switch hitter that helps a lot. But I think you also look at it. I know the big negative when it came to Profar was, can he keep this up? Because this was a career year for him. This is a guy that's been in the bigs for a long time. Can he keep this up? Can he be consistent? And for, hearing all the interviews about it, hearing just the changes that he made to his swing, it really does feel like something that is sustainable. And, what a 3-year deal too for him?
3-year deal. Yeah.
Yeah. 3-year deal. So, I mean, this is something that I think could be just a real consistent piece of the lineup for, the next few seasons. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. It's not a long-term deal anyway. So, but whenever I saw the news, it was exciting. I was very excited by the acquisition, because I really did feel like the lineup, especially in the corner outfield, it needed not only depth, but someone that could really make an impact. And Profar, to me, is that guy.
Well, and you weren't going to have Acuna for the beginning of the season. And I think what it does is it solidifies Harrison's center to have some help. You've got Profar, not defensively. I mean, nothing against Profar defensively, but he's not going to win a Gold Glove out there, I would say. But you get Profar on the left, and then you kind of put Jared Kelenic into what I think right now is his best role, and it's a platoon guy. And you get De La Cruz, who's got some pop from the right side. I like the fact those guys are platooning and not being counted on to be your corner outfielders for the first month or two. I think that's a massive thing that maybe we didn't talk about as much or didn't see as much when Profar was signed, not just because of what Profar is, but what it does and to set the rest of your outfield. So I like that a lot. We talked a little bit about the infield, Drake Baldwin. We're obviously going to have conversations about him. I mean, what were anything stand out that you kind of saw? I'm excited to watch him. Like, I'm just excited to see him, what he looks like at the major league level.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you see all the reports about him and how much he's grown over the past season, and he's shot up just about every prospect board, and for good reason. So I'm curious to see how it translates at a major league level, because this is really an opportunity to see how major league ready he is. Because I don't
Mhm.
know if the Braves were necessarily anticipating that he would be on the opening day roster. If because the Sean Murphy injury, obviously you don't take that into consideration. But I was very curious to see if they were going to keep him in AAA just to get him that those everyday reps, or just have him up to be the backup to Murphy because of because of Darno leaving.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very excited to see what he brings to the table on opening day. I think that's probably it's a sneaky storyline for me, but it's up there as far as like the top storylines that I'm excited to see over the course of this weekend.
Yeah, we'll talk here in a second about players to watch, but I did like what you just mentioned there. I want to see what he looks like in terms, I mean, being thrust into a starting role, commanding the pitching staff at a young age. That's something hard, really, to do. I recall we were talking about baby Braves earlier. Something that stuck out to John Smoltz about Brian McCann, like his ability to, command at a young age and what he was able to do. So, not comparing the two, I'm just sitting here saying, like, it's rare that a rookie can do that. And so Baldwin's ability to call games, abilities to have a rapport. I mean, he's been building that through spring, but it's different when you're playing in front of 40,000 on opening day in San Diego. It's way different than playing at the Grapefruit League. I wanted to hit on one last thing before we kind of get to our players to watch. To me, if there is a massive question mark, okay, we've talked about on the offense, it's pitching, and maybe it's not even the starters. Logan, I do have some concern about this bullpen. I think that in the sense of guys are going to have to step up. Okay, the two big things for me: Joe Jimenez probably not going to pitch this year. Like we could maybe see him, and I don't anticipate that. AJ Minter, your kind of top lefty reliever, whether you like AJ Minter or not, the top lefty reliever option that Snicker wanted to go to he's a Met. So
Yeah.
Dylan Lee is a guy that he would have to continue to grow into that role. I was kind of looking at some other options, there too. Aaron Bummer, who this is crazy, by the way. Aaron Bummer was the definition of unlucky last year. Like when you look at his expanded advanced metrics, it's ridiculous. That being said, we'll dive into more stuff and content like that here in the next couple of weeks. But does the bullpen make you nervous? We can talk starting pitching, but the bullpen, I feel like it's going to have to be a bunch of development. And yes, Jesse Chavez is back, so there is that, and Craig Kimbrell is too. But your thoughts on the bullpen?
It feels like a makeshift bullpen. It really does, and I think it speaks volumes that the Braves really wanted Jeff Hoffman, and the physicals said no, and now Jeff Hoffman's on another team. But it's so interesting to me how they didn't go after another guy, because I think that was all the way back in November, whenever
It was
that
middle to late November. Yeah, I think so.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was very early in the offseason when that whole ordeal happened, and I don't know if they just decided, you know what, there's not really another option here that we like. Let's table this, or try to get some sort of trade in the middle of the season to get somebody. I don't know. I really don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
it is concerning. I think there's just not a lot of depth there, and especially considering the fact that I mean, you have two innings eaters. Well, really one, because Freed was hurt, but Charlie Morton was your innings eater guy.
Yeah.
He's gone. Freed is gone, and so it's not just a concern with the bullpen. I think there's a concern with the rotation. I'm excited to see how the young guys take a step up. I mean, Schwellenbach was one of the bright spots for last year, and AJ Smith-Shawver, you just keep waiting for that breakout season
Mm-hmm.
from him. So I don't know. There is concern with the bullpen, but I definitely think just with the pitching as a whole, there's just this concern. And I don't expect Chris Sale to have the same production as he did last year. I mean, he's a
Yeah.
year older, and again, just one healthy season, sure, but even then, like, was not available toward the end of this season with an injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how to feel about the pitching as a whole. Again, it's kind of similar to last year, where if everything breaks right, I think this team very much is a World Series contender. But you definitely see the scenario where it falls apart, and it falls apart very hard. But again, if the offense is anywhere close to where it was, it's going to be how it's been over the past few seasons with the Braves, where the team is just going to outslug everybody, which they can easily do.
So it brings us to kind of the final conversation of our expectations. And you hinted at it. I'm going to go with a floor and a ceiling. I think the ceiling of this team is World Series contender. I mean, I'm not going to. Of course, you could say World Series winner. That's an easy one, right? But World Series contender. I think the floor, and here's my floor. May disagree, may agree. Third in the NL East, just missing out on a playoff spot. Like if everything doesn't go right, like they could be that fourth wild card team. Maybe the floor is and that would require some injuries probably, and just the pitching just isn't. You don't get the innings that you needed with what you lost and Morton and Fried.
Yeah, I think to me, I still feel like the floor. And it's crazy to think about because there is a scenario where they miss the playoffs, but just based on the teams in the National League, I kind of look at it and say, what teams would make the playoffs over it, and that's where it gets a little tricky for me, at least when it comes to figuring out the floor of this team. I definitely agree with you with the ceiling. That's for sure. Yeah. I think if everything breaks right, I mean, this team could be back in the World Series and no one would bat an eye. Obviously, again, NLCS, that matchup against the Dodgers, I think is what a lot of people would have on paper. And, man, that would be a series for the ages. I would love that.
Hey, Ben Verlander came out with his projections. Did you see the playoff run he had the Braves going through? That I would never – we'd quit the podcast. We'd do 1 year of the podcast and say there's nothing else to talk about. If they went through the Mets, the Phillies, and the Dodgers, you're like, I don't care who we're playing out of the AL. You just went through a gauntlet. To answer your question, by the way, here's the teams that I think, and maybe the numbers don't add up. You tell me if I'm wrong. So if they finish third in the East, it'd be Mets, Phillies. I think there's one team in the Central because I just Jeff Passan was asked the other day on Jeff Passan was asked the other day on Russillo's podcast about the NL Central, and he was just like, whoever decides they want to win it, I guess. I don't know. The West is where I think it get interesting. I love what Arizona did in the offseason, and I think their staff is pretty good. And then obviously LA and San Diego. So it's like if there's three out there, three in the West, two in the East, you're jockeying. I think you're arguing semantics at that point. It's like, okay, are you the first team out or are you the last team in? I think pretty much consensus, that's the floor of this team, it feels like, in 2025. So we talked about expectations. I don't think it's necessarily World Series or bust because winning World Series is hard, and that's not an easy thing to do. But a player to watch, Logan, as we kind of wrap things up here on the first episode of the season. Who's a guy that you're just paying attention to throughout the season that you feel like, hey, could be in for something pretty special this year?
Man, it's a good question. Whenever we were talking about this before, I really wanted Matt Olson because, again, he's a guy that I feel like is an every other year player. But now just thinking about the rotation, I kind of want to go in on Spencer Schwellenbach even more.
I love it.
Because he's a guy, to me, you think about ceiling outcomes for Schwellenbach this year. Would it surprise anyone if he was a Cy Young contender?
Outside of the Braves fan base, maybe, but inside, I don't think so.
Because here's the thing. Everyone's talking about Chris Sale, but Schwellenbach has to step up in the early season, especially if the Braves want to get off on a high note. And I think he's absolutely the guy that can do that. Because you look at the metrics are there, the stuff is there, the command is there, and I just really, really believe that he can take another step forward this season. So I was going to go Olson, but I do think a lot of people are going with the bounce back. So I'm changing it up on the spot. I'm going to go Schwellenbach.
I like the Schwellenbach pick because you said this earlier in the show. He was so consistent last year. Like, I don't think across the league, maybe people were like, oh, look at that kid in Atlanta. I mean, you had to be kind of a diehard fan to like look at what he did. And from let's say you're a Padres fan and say, oh man, that kid's pretty good. Or maybe he pitched against your team and you noticed. But as a Braves fan, man, when you look at that, you're like, okay, that'll play. Like if you can do what he's doing, that'll play. And that's I don't want to say top line guy, but I mean, you got to think if he continues to develop, he could be a number 2 for you behind a Strider or a Sale in some type of situation. So Interesting. I like it. I love it, and he's got to step up. I go with you there. My pick is in the lineup, and I don't want to put any specific numbers, but I think with a clean bill of health, Michael Harris can make the jump to superstar. I, I mean, we know what he can do defensively. Infectious attitude. I think this is also a year where he can grow as a vocal leader in this team. He's not really the rookie anymore. He's kind of in that purgatory where he's not a rookie, but he's also not the grizzled vet. But as the Braves have this youth movement still of younger guys, you know, I guess they're still young, but you're going to have Drake Baldwin. Harris feels like the leader of that next tier of players, and I'm not meaning in like he's not as good, but Riley and Olsen are older, I guess we can say. Acuna's 26 now, 27 now. Ozzy's a little older. Michael Harris feels like he's the young guy, but this new age of Braves players. I think can be a franchise cornerstone for you. And like I said, I don't want to pin any numbers on it, but I was looking at some stuff. Like I'm going to say 30-30 season. Like I think Michael Harris could really, with a clean bill of health, we know what he can do in terms of just in the field. I love his swing from the left side, how he can be short and compact. He can also, put a ball on top of the chop house. So I got Michael Harris as my player to watch. And I think, look, Logan, to kind of round things off here, if those two guys make the jump, Michael Harris to MLB.com does that top 100 players thing. I don't remember where they were. Like, I don't know where Harris was, but let's just say he makes the jump to like a top 50 player in the league. Maybe he already, I don't know. I don't know where he was. He is. Okay. Let's say top 35.
Yeah.
Let's say he makes that type of jump. And Schwellenbach makes is in the Cy Young conversation in August and September. Now you're talking about when we were talking about expectations, those two guys could be linchpins for a real big run in October.
Absolutely. 100%. And I believe the thing about Harris too, consider how he ended last season. One of the things about the Braves playoff exits, to me, Harris was one of, if not the only bright spot during that entire series. And I was a big fan of how he was able to end his season, and not just that one series, but just the close of the regular season too. He really can take a step up, and I'm trying to look and see for you. I'm trying to see exactly where Harris is, because he's not top 50 in MLB.
Yeah. Okay,
he should be though. In fact, I don't even know if I see him in the top 100.
If he makes a jump to a top 50, top 75 player, then I think that's a legitimate.
Take that back. 67. He's 67.
Okay, so give me top 50. If he jumps up 17 or more spots this year, I think Atlanta is good. And I like what you said about Schwellenbach. If he's in the Cy Young conversation, it could be a fun season there in Atlanta. But hey, a little fun episode to kind of kick things off here. We're obviously going to have lots more content. Figuring out the scheduling. Logan just got done. In John Rothstein's words, he's going to sleep in May, but March did just end for him. I'm not going to be with the LSU women's team in Washington State, thank God. Too long of a flight for me to handle that. So not doing that, but we're going to have great coverage all year long. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you know when the latest episodes come out. And obviously in the podcast platforms there as well, too. And don't forget, our friends over at Georgia Golf Company, you can use code TCB15 for 15% off your order. They got great stuff. They do a good job of representing the state of Georgia, too, which, look, I know not all Braves fans are located in Georgia. It's okay, Logan. You couldn't be, the purest form of a Braves fan. I get it. Not all of you can. But that being said, make sure you hop on the train and support them and support us as well. Happy opening day, folks. Padres and then the Dodgers. We'll be recapping both series next week. Some off days, and so should be fun. Early season Dodge. This is a very early litmus test for the Braves, and so I'm excited to kind of see what they look like out of the gate. Logan Whaley, my name's Bryce Koon. We appreciate you tuning in and watching and listening, and we will catch you next time here on the Chopaholic.